The night the ranch hand spoke the words that would change both their lives, the wind was screaming across the plains like it had a grievance with the world. It rattled the loose boards of the widow's house and carried the smell of dust and dry grass through the open door. She stood at the stove, stirring beans that had already been cooked too long, when she heard him clear his throat behind her. There was something fragile in that sound, something that made her pause mid-stir. Then he said it, quietly, without bravado or humor, as if confessing a sin to an empty church. "I have not had a woman in 5 years," said the ranch hand to the widow. The words hung in the air, heavy and awkward, and for a moment she thought the wind itself had stopped to listen. Her name was Margaret Hale, and widowhood had carved its own lines into her face. She had not always been this thin or this tired. Once, she had been a woman who laughed easily, whose hands were soft, whose heart still believed that life followed some kind of fair order. Then her husband died under a horse that slipped in a ravine, and fairness left with him. Since then, her days had become a careful routine of survival. She rose before dawn, tended her small patch of land, mended what could be mended, and spoke little to anyone beyond what was necessary. Loneliness had become her silent companion, familiar enough that she no longer argued with it. The man behind her was named Thomas Reed, though most folks just called him Tom. He worked the neighboring ranch, a tall, broad-shouldered man with hands permanently roughened by rope and sun. He had come by that evening to return a borrowed tool, or at least that was the excuse he had given himself. In truth, he had been circling this moment for months, drawn to the quiet strength he saw in Margaret, to the way she carried her grief without letting it turn her bitter. He had watched her from a distance, never crossing a line, never daring to hope for more than a few exchanged words at the fence. But loneliness has a way of pressing against a man's ribs until something gives. Margaret did not turn around right away. She stared at the bubbling pot, her thoughts colliding with old memories and unspoken fears. 5 years, she repeated silently. 5 years was a long time to carry that kind of hunger, but she understood it more than he knew. She had not been touched with tenderness since the day she buried her husband. Yet hearing it spoken aloud unsettled her. Not because it offended her, but because it cracked open something she had sealed shut for her own protection. "I don't know why you'd say that to me," she finally replied, her voice steady but distant. She set the spoon down and wiped her hands on her apron, still facing away from him. "I'm not sure what you're asking." Tom swallowed. He had rehearsed 100 speeches in his head, each one braver and smoother than the last, but none of them survived contact with the moment. "I'm not asking for anything improper," he said, though the heat in his face betrayed his nerves. I reckon I wanted to be honest. I've been alone a long time. Longer than I care to admit. And when I look at you, I don't just see a widow. I see someone who knows what it is to lose, and still stand up the next morning." She turned then, slowly, meeting his eyes for the first time that evening. What she saw there surprised her. There was no hunger that frightened her, no demand. There was ache, yes, but also respect, and a vulnerability that few men ever allowed themselves to show. It disarmed her more than any bold advance could have. "You think I don't know what loneliness feels like," she said quietly. "You think being a widow is easier than being a man alone." The words came sharper than she intended, edged with years of restraint. "Every night I sit at that table with an empty chair across from me. Every morning I wake up reaching for someone who isn't there." Tom nodded, shame flickering across his face. "I know I can't know it the way you do," he said. "I wouldn't dare claim that. I just know that when I'm near you, the world don't feel quite so empty." Silence settled between them, thick and uncertain. Outside, the wind resumed its howl, as if reminding them that the world did not pause for human hesitation. Margaret folded her arms, a gesture more protective than defensive. She had learned the cost of opening her heart. Love, once lost, left scars that never truly healed. Yet something in Tom's honesty stirred a warmth she had not felt in years, a dangerous and welcome thing all at once. "You can't fill a grave with companionship," she said at last. "And I won't be someone's answer to loneliness alone. I won't be a cure." "I wouldn't ask you to be," Tom replied quickly. "I ain't looking to replace what you lost. I know that's sacred ground. I just thought, maybe two lonely people don't have to be lonely in the same way forever." The simplicity of that thought struck her harder than any grand declaration. She looked at him for a long moment, searching for signs of selfishness or impatience, and found none. Instead, she saw a man who had waited 5 years not because he couldn't take what he wanted, but because he respected the quiet boundaries of decency. "You should go," she said softly, though there was no dismissal in her tone. "Not because you've done wrong. Because I need time to think." Tom accepted that without argument. He picked up his hat, hesitated, then nodded. "I'll be here," he said. "Not standing at your door, not pressing. Just here." After he left, Margaret sat alone at her table long after the beans had gone cold. Memories rose unbidden, of laughter shared, of hands entwined, of promises made and broken by fate. She had built her life around the idea that loving again would somehow betray the man she had lost. Yet as the night deepened, she began to understand that grief was not a contract of eternal solitude. Perhaps honoring the past did not require sacrificing the future. Days passed, then weeks. Tom did not return to her door, true to his word. But he was present in the small ways that mattered. A repaired fence she hadn't asked for. Firewood stacked neatly by her shed. A nod and a respectful greeting when they crossed paths. Each quiet kindness chipped away at the wall she had built around herself. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in colors that felt almost cruel in their beauty, Margaret walked to the fence that separated their lands. Tom was there, mending a post, his sleeves rolled up, his movements steady and unhurried. She stood there longer than necessary, until he noticed her and straightened. "I thought I told you I'd be here," he said gently. "You did," she replied. "And I've been thinking." He waited, giving her space even now. "I can't promise you anything," she continued. "I'm not the woman I was before. I carry my past with me every day." Tom smiled, not with triumph, but with understanding. "I don't need promises," he said. "I just need truth." She took a breath that felt like stepping off a cliff. "The truth is, I'm tired of being afraid of what I might lose again," she said. "And I'm more tired of pretending I don't still want to feel alive." That was how it began, not with passion or haste, but with two people choosing courage over comfort. Their relationship unfolded slowly, built on shared work, quiet conversations, and an unspoken agreement to honor what had come before without being ruled by it. There were moments of doubt, nights when Margaret woke from dreams of her husband and wept silently, and Tom learned to hold space for that grief without jealousy or resentment. In time, the words Tom had spoken that windy night lost their rawness and took on a different meaning. They were no longer a confession of deprivation, but a reminder of how long he had waited for something real. And Margaret learned that love, when offered with patience and respect, did not erase the past. It stood beside it, steady and warm, like a hand offered in the dark. The ranch hand and the widow did not find a perfect ending, because life does not grant those. What they found instead was something quieter and truer, the understanding that loneliness is not a life sentence, and that even after loss, the human heart remains capable of opening again. In choosing to be honest, to be patient, and to be brave, they discovered that healing does not mean forgetting where you've been. It means allowing yourself to believe that the road ahead still holds light.